Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to impartially explore the history of Karbala, an event that completely and profoundly shaped the Islamic world. We'll be sticking strictly to the historical accounts to piece together exactly what happened, step by step, and figure out why this story still resonates so powerfully today.
Let's just jump right in and look at the sheer, staggering odds described in the historical texts. Picture this. On one hand, you have a tiny caravan of just 72 individuals. And that's not just fighters. That includes men, women, and children. On the other hand, facing them down in a scorching desert is a massive, fully equipped army of 30,000 soldiers. So how on earth did history arrive at this incredible, completely lopsided standoff? Well, to understand that, we have to look back at the very foundation of the Islamic Empire.
Section 1. The Crisis of Succession. If we look back at the empire's foundation, we see a really crucial shift in leadership over time. It starts in 632 CE, with the passing of Prophet Muhammad. From there, the leadership of the Muslim world passed through several caliphs, right up until 661 CE when Hazrat Ali was martyred, and Muawiyah took power to establish the Umayyad Caliphate. But the real turning point? That happens in 680 CE. Muawiyah dies, and his son Yazid declares himself caliph. And, as you'll see, this is exactly where the major fracture happens. Now, Yazid's claim to power wasn't just accepted quietly, it was immediately and heavily disputed by the community, and the historical texts give us three main reasons why. First off, he was known for immoral conduct. Second, he entirely bypassed the traditional process, meaning he wasn't actually elected by the Muslim community. And finally, instead of earning people's loyalty naturally, he used force to demand allegiance, a pledge known as bay'ah. Enter Hazrat Hussain. As the grandson of the Prophet and the son of Ali, he stood his ground and absolutely refused to pledge his allegiance. His stance is perfectly captured in this famous quote, "A person like me cannot give bay'ah to a person like Yazid." For Hussein, endorsing Yazid literally meant endorsing a ruler who went against the core Islamic principles of justice and morality. It was a red line he simply wouldn't cross. And this definitive refusal, it set into motion a journey that would change history forever. Section 2. The road to Karbala. So word of Hussein's resistance spread like wildfire. Over in Kufa, a city in present-day Iraq, the people were desperate for just leadership. They actually sent over 12,000 letters inviting Hussein to come and lead them against Yazid's oppressive rule. 12,000! They promised him their full, unwavering support and protection. But tragically, this massive wave of support was actually building into a devastating trap. Here's how it played out. First, Hussein sends his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil ahead to verify the situation. He gets there and confirms, yes, the support is real. So, moving to the next step, in the year 60 AH, Hussein leaves Makkah with his family and closest companions. But then Yazid makes a move. He appoints a ruthless new governor in Kufa named Ibn Ziyad. This new governor immediately uses terror tactics, mass arrests, and ultimately he has Muslim ibn Aqil killed. Because of this extreme, sudden terror, the Kufans completely abandoned their promise to Hussein. That massive wave of support, it just vanished almost overnight. And Hussein actually received the devastating news of his cousin's martyrdom while he was already on the road. Section 3. The Siege and Thirst. Now, despite receiving that tragic news, and despite explicit warnings from wise companions like Ibn Abbas and Ibn Omar telling him not to continue, Hussein was absolutely determined not to accept oppression. So in the month of Muharram, 61 AH, his small caravan is intercepted. A commander named Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, leading 1,000 of Yazid's soldiers, forces Hussein's caravan to halt. The place they stopped? A barren desert land near the Euphrates River called Karbala. And soon after, Yazid's full army arrives under the command of Umar ibn Sa'd, bringing their total right up to those 30,000 soldiers we talked about earlier. And the history reveals a profoundly tragic detail here, centered around the number 3. On the 7th of Muharram, Yazid's forces completely blocked any access to the Euphrates River, meaning for 3 entire days, Hussein, his companions, his family, and even the young children in his camp had absolutely no water. 3 days in the searing desert heat. It's almost unimaginable. This brings us to the Night of Ashura, the 9th of Muharram. Hussein knows a massacre is imminent, so he gathers his companions together and tells them, "These people only want me. You are all free to leave. I release you from your allegiance to me." He even went as far as turning off the lights in the camp, so that anyone who wanted to slip away could do so in the dark without feeling any embarrassment. Yet, when the lights came back on, Every single companion was still there. They completely refused to leave him, and that steadfast loyalty paved the way to the fateful morning of the 10th of Muharram. Section 4. The Day of Ashura. As the sun rose, Hussein and his companions offered their fajr, their dawn prayer. After that, Hussein actually rode out and made one final, desperate plea for peace to the massive army standing right in front of him. He reminded them, "Did you not write letters inviting me? Fear Allah and do not kill me." And the response from those 30,000 soldiers? Just total, chilling silence. But right then, we see a stunning turn of events just before the battle kicks off. Commander Hur, the very man who had initially intercepted Hussein's caravan, is suddenly overcome with regret. He repents, leaves Yazid's army behind, and actually switches sides. He rode straight over to Hussein to fight alongside him, and ultimately he became among the very first to be martyred that day. Then the battle commenced, and it took an unimaginable toll on Hussein's family and his closest companions. One by one they fell. There was Ali Akbar, Hussein's young son, who was said to most resemble the Prophet. Abbas, his incredibly brave brother, who was martyred while desperately trying to fetch water for the camp. And this next one is truly heartbreaking. Ali Asghar, Hussein's 6-month-old infant, who was brought out just to beg for water, but was instead shot by an arrow. And Qasim, Hussein's newly married nephew. After all 72 companions and family members fell, the historical record brings us to a really crucial, poignant point. Hussein stood completely alone. Think about this. He was 57 years old. He was severely wounded, actively grieving his entire family, and incredibly thirsty after days without a single drop of water. And yet, he stood his ground with absolute dignity against thousands of soldiers. Hussein fought bravely until he was physically overwhelmed by the sheer volume of swords and arrows. According to the historical texts, a soldier named Sinan ibn Anas dealt the final blow. Hussein was martyred. His head was separated and taken all the way to Yazid in Damascus. The horrific events of the battlefield ended that day, but in reality, the echoes of Karbala were only just beginning. Section 5. The Enduring Legacy. The immediate aftermath was just brutal. Hussein's camps were burned to the ground and looted. The surviving women and children, which included Hussein's sister Hazrat Zainab and his ill son, were taken as prisoners and paraded through the streets of Kufa and Damascus. But this actually backfired on Yazid. Why? Because right there in his very own court, Hazrat Zainab delivered a fearless, incredibly powerful speech. She exposed his oppression and broadcast the true story of Karbala to the entire world. It is honestly staggering to step back and look at just how rapidly this all escalated, from Yazid taking power in 680 CE to Hussein leaving Makkah, arriving at Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram, having the water cut off on the 7th, and finally, the ultimate sacrifice occurring just 3 days later on the day of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram. We're talking about a matter of mere weeks that quite literally changed the world forever. And that leads us to exactly why we're still talking about and exploring this history today. The legacy of Karbala. It became the ultimate historical symbol of standing up against oppression and absolute injustice. It cemented this powerful lesson that truth must never, ever bow to falsehood, completely regardless of the odds against you. It's an event that forever changed Islamic history, teaching generations that sacrificing everything for righteousness is the highest possible honor. Looking at this incredible stand against absolute injustice really forces us to turn inward, doesn't it? If you were forced into a corner, having to choose between yielding to massive, overwhelming power or standing firmly by your core moral principles, what would you be willing to sacrifice for the truth? Would you have stood your ground if you were one of those 72? I want to leave you today with this really famous historical quote: "Every land is Karbala, every day is Ashura." It's such a powerful reminder that the struggle between truth and falsehood wasn't just some isolated incident in a desert in 680 CE. It's something that continues everywhere, all around us, every single day. So ask yourself, when your Ashura arrives, where will you stand? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.